Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome back to another edition of E-Heroes. For those keeping count, this is episode 379, and we're going across the pond to a little place called the UK. And I brought on a fantastic person. We're to talk about podcasting. And I know, this is a show that is basically a podcast, and it's been around for a while. But, there are people that do this full time to teach people. And so I wanted to bring in Kath Lord Green, and she is your fairy podmother. So, welcome, Kath, and
Mhm.
thanks for being here.
You're very welcome, Rob. I am delighted to be here. And yes, I'm your fairy podmother. Um, people laugh at that, but I've trademarked it in the UK for training and for audio purposes because everyone was saying how, oh, this is great, but I didn't start out as your fairy podmother. I was in radio, etc. But when I left radio, I could go more into that in a minute. But the newspaper said Kath Lord Green has launched the business in podcasting. She is your podcaster master. And I thought, oh, that sounds good. I'll go with that. And for the first few months, I did. And then one day I woke up and I thought, I'm not your podcaster master. I'm your fairy podmother. It felt very masculine. It felt very corporate. And I was going on a training, online training meeting with lots of business women. And I said, can I ask you, what do you think of this? And they all went, absolutely yes. And
Mhm.
then I questioned myself and said, but what about the guys that I teach podcasting? Are they going to think this is, I'm not working with your fairy pod mother. I'm not working with the fairy pod mother. So I thought, I'll phone some guys, reach out and say, what do you think if I call myself your fairy pod mother? What do you think of that? Would you work with me? And they said, guys love godmothers and mothers. Of course, we don't mind that. So I changed it and I went through the trademark process to make sure that Fairy Podmother over in the UK is definitely mine. So yeah, that's why I ended up your fairy podmother. And there she is in the background. I don't know if people listening on audio, they can't see her, but I do have a cutout of your fairy podmother. She's got wings, a microphone, and headphones. And yeah, it's just a little bit different. I think it helps you stand out a little bit, helps you be a bit more memorable.
Yeah, it does, and that's why I brought you on the show because you're different. And as all the listeners know, that I try to be selective in who I bring in, and I do, invite people, on my own. I don't use a service. I don't use any of that. I'm very selective, and I want people that have a story, that have what I call an origin story, and what made them get into podcasting. But you already have this. They labeled you a master, but that's great, and some people do like that, but I like Podmother better, because it
Mhm.
it already tells people what to expect, you know.
Yeah,
and,
I
and
think
a master lords over people, and that's fine if you want to get your butt kicked, but a pod mother gently guides you through, and I think it's better.
I do too.
So I've been this show is going on. It's, well, 2018 is when I started, so 2026 would be 8 years. And before that, I had co-authored a book about podcasting, and my earliest podcast was 2010, and I think it lasted like 15, 16 episodes. And back then, you didn't have the streaming like you do now. It's just
No.
very easy to upload your stuff, and it gets fed to all these podcast channels. Back then, we were putting stuff on CDs, and I was like, do I really have to do this? And
I know. The
it
thing
was just
is, Rob,
awful.
I think what people don't realize, they think it's a new thing,
Mhm.
and it's not a new thing. podcasts were audio blogs in the 80s. In the 1980s, there were podcasts, but it was blogs with audio, and they were called audio blogs. It was just people who were adding audio to their blogs that were going out there.
Hmm.
And then in 2004, in the UK, Ben Hammersley of the Guardian newspaper wrote an article about audio blogs, and he called them podcasts. iPod in your ears and broadcast put together, get it out there, broadcast, podcast. And it stuck. And that was 2004. That was 21 years ago. And people think they're a new thing. And this
Hmm.
always makes me laugh because they were around in the 80s. Then they changed the name, but they've been around for a very long time. What they haven't been around so long for is, I think, for B2B businesses to use. People are using audio for all different things now. I'm trying to encourage people to look at the fact that they are accessible to more people, they're inclusive. If you're dyslexic, or you can't see very well, or you can't read, or you've got email fatigue, or English is a second language, any of these reasons, there's loads of reasons that people prefer audio. And if you've got audio along with, say, your newsletter in your business or internal communications, I've done for Sport England, I did the internal training podcasts, and that was for training. There's so many different ways to use a podcast. Others think you've got to interview someone to have a podcast as
Hmm.
well. It can't just be you talking, giving valuable information. So a podcast is just really good, either entertaining, information, golden nuggets, tips, frequently asked questions answered, that sort of thing in audio format. So people can listen to it, downloadable, streamable, like you said.
Hmm.
And more people using them for different reasons, which is great.
The typical length of this podcast is 35, 40. Sometimes it goes to an hour. But one of my clients is a lawyer, and that's all he does is he takes these frequently asked questions and turns them into 5 or 6 minute, you know, additions
Perfect.
and episodes. And every 52 episodes, he sends me the transcripts and he says, Rob, make this into a book. So we're working on
Yes.
volume 8. And so,
Yes.
it's he's been doing this for many, many years. But what he's discovered is that his clients like the short 5 minute, you know, and then they can go about their day. But then when he puts it into a book form, now it's tangible. People can go back and reference it. And
That
he
is
doesn't
another,
well, he doesn't make money
that
on the
is,
books. He
no,
gives them away.
yeah, that is another great way of, you can either, people also say, "Well, I haven't got the content." Have you already got blogs? Have you already got books? Have you already got articles on your website? They could be audio, or the other way around. If you just want to talk into a mic, talk into your laptop, you can then transcribe that. You can do it either or, and it's brilliant. But you touched on the length there. That is the most frequently asked question I get. Kath, how long should it be?
Mm-hmm.
And I say, however long it needs to be. However, where is your target market listening?
Hmm.
What are they doing when they're listening? So if they're commuting to work, is it around 20 minutes? 20 minutes. In the UK, the average podcast is 20 to 30 minutes,
Hmm.
but that is because some are 5 minutes, like you were saying, little snippets, and people like that. They can listen to the whole series in an hour,
Hmm.
and some are an hour or 2 hours long. So the average is 20 to 30 minutes. But I would say, where is your target listener going to be listening?
Hmm.
In the car, going to work, in the gym, washing up the dishes at night, doing the gardening. What are they actually doing? And then you can say, well, that's averages about 20, 30 minutes. People like to listen to a whole episode if they can in a one hour. They don't want to stop and then come back. So you've got to think about that. But if it needs to be 2 hours because all of that is really, really good information for the person that is listening, well, then it needs to be 2 hours.
Mhm. You know, what I've discovered though is Europe seems to embrace technology a little quicker than the United States, and I don't know why. You know,
Really?
it's. I was over in France last year for 2 weeks. Took my mother-in-law there for her 80th birthday, and
Wow.
they were using ChatGPT for search versus Google. Here we still embrace Google. I don't like it. I've been using
Yeah.
chat for a while, but everybody I stepped into, these conversations, people would be on their phone searching through chat because it was easier. They would get more direct
Yeah.
messages. And same with
Mhm.
podcasts, um,
Yeah.
the UK market for podcasts is just amazing. I get so
I
many
think
listeners from the UK. It
really, yeah,
they
that
want
is really
they
good.
want that information. They desire it. Yes, we
Yeah.
we have streaming, we have Netflix and Prime and all these other things that they could watch. But sometimes
Yeah.
people just want to hear, and so
Yes.
they can take their
Well,
podcast
the thing is,
anywhere.
exactly, anytime, any place, anywhere. And it's more intimate, especially for businesses. You get that know, like, and trust. If they're listening to you in your ears, it's quite intimate. And I also think, when we were born, we were babies. Our mom, dad, granddad, auntie, carer, whoever would pick us up and tell us stories. We're used to listening to stories. We're programmed to listen to things and
Mhm.
make sense of it ourselves. And I think that's why podcasting is going to be around for such a long time because we actually love to listen
Mhm.
and make sense of it ourselves. Sometimes, if you're watching something, there's too much going on, and not quite yet, but we will in the future. We can't watch a video when we're driving in the car. We can't watch a video when we're walking the dog. I've no doubt that in the future we will, but right now you can put in your earbuds, you can walk off, and you can be entertained, you can be educated, you can be informed. And all of that absolutely lights me up. I've been in audio for such a long time. I was a news correspondent on commercial radio. So that was audio. So I would go out, I would get the story, I would come back, I would edit it, put it all together and get it out there. And that's exactly what you do with a podcast. So I've
Right.
been podcasting over 25 years. I have interviewed the Prime Minister in the past, lots of famous people when I was in news. And I've just always loved audio. The power of audio still lights me up all this time later. I just think it's such a great medium. I
You
really,
know, they,
really do.
they used to say that, great audio kept people tuned in. But I've listened to poor audio through radio, through streaming, and yeah, it's annoying, but you still stay tuned because you want to hear what they're gonna say.
Yeah. Well,
And
this is what I said to people as well. You don't have to have a fancy studio.
right.
I've got loads of equipment in here. I've got all the mics. I've got umpteen of them. I could build another radio station quite easily. But there's so many bits of software now on the market. You can make it sound like you're in a studio. As long as your audio is okay,
Mhm.
it passes now. It didn't used to. When I was in radio news, I had to make sure it was tip top. I've, to be honest, over the years, I brought my standards down because no one needs it tip top anymore. People are happy for it to be authentic, but it needs to sound okay. It doesn't have to
Mhm.
sound amazing. The main thing is, for me, is the valuable content. That's what keeps people coming back. If you're giving a tip, a golden nugget, you're entertaining someone, or whatever it is they've tuned in for, if they're getting that, they'll put up with a little buzz or a little dog barking in the background or whatever happens during that podcast, they will forgive that because it makes you sound real.
Hmm.
You're authentic, you're building that trust. But if the sound is really bad, it will put people off. But it can be just okay. It doesn't have to be. The best podcasts are not made in the best studios. They're just not. Do you know what? I think COVID had a lot to do with that. We were so used to talking to each other online and having poor quality that people are used to hearing other things going on,
Hmm.
whereas they didn't used to be.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's so many bad podcasts quality, so many bad radio station quality, but people still listen. If they want to listen, they'll still listen.
I had an episode where I was being interrupted constantly with noises, and it happened to be one of my best podcasts. People were downloading it. They're saying, "This is great, Rob." And I'm like, "Yes."
Do you know what? This is the same. I had a client, she was in Wales, and I said, "Oh, the audio for this is quite bad." I said, it's quite distorted in bits. I have done because I also produce for people as well as train people. But I said, this isn't my favorite episode to give you back to put out. I said, I'm just not happy with it. And she says, oh, I don't care, I'm putting it out. A few weeks later, she came back to me. She said, do you know that episode you didn't want to put out? I said, yeah. She said, that's my best performing episode. I said, do you know what? I knew you were going to say that. I knew she was going to come back and say that. She said, I knew it would be. It just proves it was an interesting episode. So if something's happening, sometimes you're not sure whether it's you. Is it your headphones that have gone off? Is it on the recording? Is it not on the recording? And I just knew it. I thought, oh, so you're right. Sometimes, if people want to listen, they'll listen.
One of the things that I started eHeroes kind of off of a whim. I wanted something different to do. Yes, I produce books and write books and so people would, hey Rob, I found your book in the Norway bookstore. Great. And
Wow.
that's fine, but and I've had people take my books to Mount Everest. I've it's but a podcast can go anywhere,
Yeah.
and so I wanted to start something different, and so when I started eHeroes, and I think this is typical to everybody who starts a podcast. You think that you're going to get instant numbers, instant credibility right away. You don't. I recorded
No.
33 episodes and then I stopped because I didn't think anybody was listening. And so 6 months went by and people were finally saying, hey, Rob, where's your podcast? Are you going to make any more episodes? And I thought, well, okay. So I did. But I started doing things a little differently. Before I was recording one a week. And if someone didn't show up, I'd be screwed. So now I
Yeah.
batch record. I do, 4 or 5 of them at a time. The whole month is done. Get them scheduled.
Yeah.
Makes my life easier. And now here we are, episode 379. We're still going, still growing. But had I stopped at 33, that would have been, 6, 7 years ago. And
I
and people would
know.
have forgotten.
Yeah. The thing is, what you can do as well is you can batch record, like you said, which is great. I always encourage my clients, let's get ahead of ourselves. We don't know what's going to happen. If you say you're coming out on a Wednesday at 11 o'clock and we're scheduling them, and then all of a sudden there's none because you're not well or you've gone on holiday or something, let's make sure. But I also said to people, you don't have to keep podcasting. Do say 12 episodes and then repurpose those, especially the business ones, like your guy, like the solicitor or accountant, legal,
Mhm.
financial. If it's something like that, you can just do a series. Say you had 12, you could then repurpose them. That's 24. You could, if you've got 12, you've got a year's worth in a month. If
Mhm.
you want to do them fortnightly, you can repurpose them over the next year. You've got a year's worth of content there if you want.
Right.
you and the thing is, if you say it was an accountant and something had changed, or a solicitor and it was something legal had changed, you can add another episode on at a later date, because if anyone's subscribed, they will get that update anyway. Because a lot of people say, I don't want to be tied in forever. I don't want to be doing a podcast forever. And that's okay too. You don't need to be, but you need to market it. You
Right.
need to make sure you're telling people about it. It's not just going to appear in someone's ear. It's got, you need to be, people need to be able to search for it.
Mhm.
What are they searching for? So when you put this out, I guess you'll say, we're talking about podcasts. If somebody wants to know about podcasts, they will find it anyway.
Mhm.
But when you're marketing it, or people that have already listened will listen anyway. But you can repurpose your podcast a few
And,
times as
and
well.
what I do is I take the feed, put it into what I use. I use a social media um, distributor like Social Bee, and then it
Yeah.
feeds it to LinkedIn or Facebook, and so my stuff is constantly showing up, and
Yes.
people can find it. And with
Yeah.
all the socials now being indexed on Google and AI, they can find podcasts so much easier now.
Yes, absolutely they can.
But
And
you
people
know,
don't realize the SEO, it helps with your SEO if you're using those keywords in your show notes. To me, I just feel as if, something you probably say, you just want to tell the whole world. Do you not understand all of this? It's not just podcast isn't what you think it is. There's loads of things you can use it for. You don't need to use it the way everyone else is. And I just want to tell everyone, but it's hard when there's just a few people saying, seriously, you could just change your newsletter into audio. You would be being more inclusive and accessible. Oh, dip your toe in. Oh, right. Could we? Yeah, you can do that. And they go, wow, I didn't realize that. It's like, how do you get the message out there constantly? It's hard.
now I do think though that everybody who does a podcast needs to do it as a human.
Yes.
Not clone your voice, not be an AI
Oh,
clone.
have you
I
seen
just
these?
I think that in order to build trust, to build authority, to build a credibility, people need to be able to hear your errors. They need to be able to hear your imperfections. That makes you human. AI is going to
Yes.
strip all that out, and it's going to make things too perfect.
I know. I saw someone advertising the other day. We'll create your podcast. We'll create it with your voice, but it's not you, it's AI. We'll put it out there. We'll create the episodes. So basically, you don't have to do anything, but you will have a podcast. And I'm like, absolutely not on my watch, you won't.
Right.
You're not, I won't be doing that with any of my clients. For me, it has to be your voice,
Mhm.
because yes, you can clone your voice, but I've tried cloning mine just to see what it sounds like. I can tell it's not me. People who know me can tell it's not me. People who don't know me wouldn't know it wasn't me. But I'm like, you're dehumanizing everything. Okay, use them to help you with your show notes, use them to help you with other things, but please don't take the voice away from it. If you're using someone else's voice, basically cloning your voice, you're not having any input to that podcast. How can you feel good about that podcast? How can you feel how can you build that trust? It's not you, it's
Mhm.
someone else. They've done everything for you just so you can say, I've got a podcast, but you've not, it's not you. And when I saw that, I'm like, how can these podcast agencies be saying that?
Yeah.
Taking money, oh, I want a podcast, but you're not going to do anything with it. Just give me the money, I'll do everything. And then we can say you've got a podcast. And people are going, yeah, that's great. And I'm going, no, that's not great. I don't
And
like that.
it makes you a lazy marketer, makes you a lazy entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Yes, we have these great things, but you get inspired.
Yeah.
Take a video yourself, talk to it, give it your thoughts. And when you get back, if
Yeah,
you want to convert that into a podcast, at least then you have some notes that you can follow.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I encourage everybody that if you're going to do a podcast, do both audio and video. You can put the
Hmm.
video on YouTube. You can put the audio on, hundreds of podcast channels.
Yeah,
People get to experience who you are face to face through video or through the ear on audio, but it
yeah.
builds trust. And,
It
when,
does.
we live in a small world, I travel a lot and people have recognized me in places where I didn't think, you know, I've gone
Yeah.
to, I was in a Dallas airport and someone says, "Rob," but I'm like,
Is that?
and so, and
I
I
was.
was in Toulouse airport in France and someone recognized me and they're like, and a couple of years ago I was in Germany in Nuremberg and I was eating in a vegan restaurant and the owner of the restaurant says, and he's staring at me. He comes up and he goes, "I have one of your books."
Oh,
And
wow,
I'm
that's
like,
amazing.
okay. But here's the thing is that, one thing can help another thing. So, my podcast, people listen to the podcast and they'll say, "Hey, well, I want to learn more about you." So now they're going to Amazon to search if I have books and they're buying books and those books are
Yeah,
going everywhere. So, you know, in your marketing tools, a podcast needs to be one of those tools that you rely on to get your marketing message out there. And it could just be a
yeah,
conversation like this, whether you're a
yeah,
guest, whether you have your own podcast, utilize
yeah,
it. And
absolutely.
I always tell
With
people if you go back to my early episodes, they were awful. Awful.
but
But the more you do
that's
it,
it.
the better you're going to be.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, some of my clients, one of them is just going into her second series. She did 30 odd in the first one, had a little break. She's doing it. And she's a finalist for Digital North Podcast of the Year. And I said, "Oh my God, this is great." She says, "Well, you produce it. It's down to you as well." I said, "But your content is really good. I really like editing and producing it because I love listening to it. But I can see how much better she's got over time. She is so good now. I'm so proud of her. But I love encouraging other people. I love championing other people as well with the podcast and showing them what can be done with a podcast. But it's funny, I was at the podcast show in London. I go each year. It's only about 3 years old, I think. And this year I was down, and someone said, you're the fairy Podmother, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." "Oh my goodness, I'm in London and you know I'm your fairy." He said, "I've seen you on LinkedIn." And I'm like, yes, how good is that? Being in London at the podcast show, and that was full of, it was like, you would love it. It was like being a kid in a candy store. It was microphones, headphones, all this stuff everywhere, and people talking about podcasts. And I'm going, "Oh my God, I love this." But there was an AI stand there as well saying you should clone your voice. And I'm going, "No, I'm not coming over there. I'm not doing
But
that one."
I've also experienced people who bought all kinds of equipment in hopes that they would be a great podcaster, and they
Yeah,
would they would do one or two, three episodes, and they would stop, and next thing I know, all their equipment's on the market.
yeah.
You, you
The
know,
thing is, you don't need
you
you
don't
don't
need all
need
that.
all you don't need all the equipment. I went into a big sustainability company and I went to do masterclass with them in person. And they said, "Oh, because we knew you were arriving, we've bought all the equipment." A lot of it didn't even fit with each other. They just bought what they thought they needed to have. And I said, "Well, if you're videoing it, okay, have the equipment so you can see, all the nice microphones. I've got everything here. If you want it on video, but if you were just doing an audio, you could do it on Zoom." And they said, oh, well, we will interview some clients on Zoom. But that's good to know. So I taught them how to do all that. But they'd gone out and bought the equipment. I had a lady on Zoom the other day. She said, I really want you to help me. And I want to do the training with you and everything. I said, that's brilliant. She said, I've already bought everything. And I'm like, oh, I'm trying. She just wants an audio podcast. I said, do you know what? When did you get it? Yesterday. I said, right, we'll probably be sending it all back. I would rather you paid for me to produce it and it sound great than
Mhm.
you don't need it. If you're not videoing, even if you're videoing, you don't need the equipment. You don't need all the equipment anymore. So yeah, you could just I encourage people also to say to their kids, it's going to be $1 billion market. It's
Mhm.
growing and growing.
Yeah.
In the UK, especially, it says 80% of the UK workforce hasn't got the digital skills they will need in the future
Yeah.
because everything is going digital, audio. So we should be encouraging people to go, do you know what? I said to people, if you buy my course, I've got a course on self-study course on my website. And I said to them, have you got children? Yeah. I said, right, do it with them as well. And they go, oh, why? I say, it's a family activity. You might find that Bob's great at editing, that Bill's great at planning for you. I said, plus, they've got that skill to take to the job market. When
Mhm.
everyone else is going along and they haven't got that, they'll say, oh, what? Could you change our newsletters to audio? Yeah. Oh, yeah, because I've learned to do it. Podcasting is the same thing. And they go, oh, well, I'll hire you then. So I'm
Mhm.
going, yeah, do it with you. Oh, right. Oh, that's great. I'll do it with my kids. So I'm trying to encourage people to do that as well, because I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's and the thing is that you don't need to be an entrepreneur if you don't want to. I use it to promote my business, but if
Yeah,
you're into sewing, if you're into dancing, if you're into whatever you're into, you can create a podcast based on your experiences. And now and
absolutely.
now you become the authority in what you do. And people are like, wow, I didn't know you could do that in sewing. I didn't know you could do that. And so they're gravitating towards you because you're the inspiration. And
Yeah.
but
Beekeepers, they've got a
right.
podcast all about, and they say, "Well, we don't know if people will listen to us." There's loads of people keeping bees. Listen to this. My mum is 84. She's got a podcast. It's a history podcast. She's had 3,700 downloads. She stopped doing it 2 years ago. She only did 10 episodes and it's still getting downloaded every week. It's about the local village's history. People listen from all around here, but they listen in America if they visited this village. They listen honestly, and it's just I produced it obviously, but also I've got her voice
Hmm.
on record
Hmm.
on this podcast forever,
Yeah.
which will be
Yeah.
very sad when I'm listening to it when the time comes that she's no longer here. But she loved doing it. And everyone's saying, she said, oh, I was at the doctor's the other day and somebody said, I've heard your podcast. I recognize your voice. I said, no, they didn't. She said, they did, because it's local. She's 84. Age isn't a barrier to podcasting.
Hmm.
You know, get those older stories on a podcast now. That, your children, your grandchildren, great grandchildren will want to know these stories with their voices. Can you imagine your great
It,
great
it's
grandchildren
it's
listening to
funny.
her voice?
It's funny because all the books that I've produced, not one of them has an audio. Not one of them has audiobook. And yet here I am doing a podcast. What's the difference? That's because I don't want to read my own book.
Yeah, but you know what you could do? You could just do 5 minute snippets of every episode that
Mm.
then sell the book,
Yeah.
because I've done that before for people. So they promote the book through a podcast
Mhm.
about that. And they said, if you want to read the whole book, if you want to read the whole book, here's where you go. Your call to action is to go and get that book. And I said to my mom, I could make this into a book for you. Wally Local History
Mhm.
is the podcast, but we haven't got it in a book. I said, that would be 10 chapters in a book, you know?
Yeah, yeah. There's so much potential, and
Oh, so
I think
much.
people get so they get so overwhelmed with the knowledge, not the knowledge of doing this, because I think everybody has the knowledge. They just don't have the
Mm.
ability or the action to create content. And here I am, pumping out books and podcasts and articles and they're like, Rob, you make it look so easy. I'm like, that's only because I've been doing it for 27 years.
Yeah.
It's
And they might have that content as well.
yeah.
Just put your laptop on and talk into it about what you know about. I
Hmm.
mean, practice that in the beginning.
Yeah.
Just practice talking into it. Listen back. And by the way, you won't like the sound of your own voice because no one does. So don't let that put you off. No one likes the sound of their own
Oh,
voice.
I had to get over that
Um,
really quickly. I'm like, that's not
yeah.
me. No, can we auto tune that? No, can I sound like George Clooney or something? Yeah.
It's like just give it a go. Just give it a go, seriously.
So, you have all this great stuff, the website, the courses but, do you get outside of the UK? Do you help people in other countries?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to help anyone anywhere, especially, if they're English speaking, because I wouldn't be much good if I couldn't speak the language. So yeah, America, absolutely. Canada, Australia, yes. And if anybody wants to work with me, I'd be delighted to work with them. I just love helping to support and grow other people's podcasts. It's great that I get to do it for my job now that I'm self-employed. Like I say, I used to be paid to work in radio, but now this is my job, my baby, and I've just opened a CIC, which
Hmm.
is a community interest company. It's a social enterprise called Poducation, and that is for people who can't afford my services. And everybody who does buy my services, I put into a pot to help somebody who can't afford my services. And if people are not in employment training um, or education and need those digital skills that we're talking about, they can come to Poducation where I can hopefully get grants and funding to help me provide that for them. That gives me a little bit of a purpose. So your fairy Podmother will provide the service for Poducation to give digital skills and podcasting skills to the generation coming up, or people wanting to go back into work and they want those skills. Anybody like that, it's more like a charity side of the business.
I like how everything is themed around podcasting. You got Podmother, you got Podeducation, and during
Mhm.
Christmas now you have Podvent. Which is,
Yes.
and I think more people need to do now, for me, I have too many brands. I have the e-heroes, and then I have, my Robism weeklies, which is on LinkedIn, and I have, Unspock Media, and then I have all this other stuff. So for me, it's hard to, you know, make a
Yeah.
brand stretch like you have, but I think it's great because it gives people an idea of who you are, what you do, what they can expect,
Yeah.
and it makes it a lot easier for them to remember.
I think I love marketing as well. I love being creative. So Advent comes out every Christmas, the 1st to the 25th, you open a window. And I said, well, how can I do that with podcasting? So I said, well, I'll have my own Podvent calendar. I'll do a mini video every day. I mean, I make a rod for my own back because then I've got to do a video every day, whether I want to or not.
Mhm.
But it keeps you visible throughout December. It's relevant, and I always try and do things. I'm always thinking of things like this. It's just the way my mind works. How can I market me better? How
Mhm.
can I stay more visible? So yeah, I think as well using Podmother, Poducation is like education, but it's podcast digital. Podvent, if it's Advent. I need to think of something for Easter now and all the other times of the year. But yeah, just anything I can add a pod onto, I will.
But I want to talk about the UK a little bit because I know that their rules on social media postings are a little different than the way we do things in the States. How has that impacted podcasting?
It's for me, I haven't noticed any. I've never not been able to post anything
Okay.
or had anything come back to me. I guess I just stay within whatever the rules are, even though I don't know what the rules specifically are. I must be staying within those because everything's okay. The only time I've had sort of a breach is when it's been a scam saying that I've breached it on Facebook
Hmm.
or breach the rules. And I think you've got to watch with music licensing and obviously things like that. But yeah, I tend to my clients who want music under the intro and the outro, I make sure that we buy that license, even if it's only five UK pounds, £20, £30, it's their music then. No one can come and say it's not. So I do try to keep it. I work with businesses and charities, so they have to do everything right.
Hmm.
Um, you can't just go and slap a tune underneath that you really like. I've seen some people
Oh yeah.
do that and they just get taken down. I don't want people to do a podcast and put all that work into it and then it disappear.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it has to be
But
redone.
yeah, or it has to be redone exactly. So trying to do it right. So I must stay within the law without knowing I'm staying in the law, if you see what I mean, because everything seems to be okay.
Yeah. And the thing is that, like I said, this world is getting smaller with all the things that we have today. Social media
Yeah.
has made it so that we can reach out to anybody. And that's how I found you on LinkedIn,
Exactly. We've found each other on LinkedIn. That would never have happened a few years ago.
and
We wouldn't be having this conversation. I just think it's incredible.
yeah, and so, we have this ability now to ask people, hey, you want to be on our podcast? And you want to talk about what you do? And I find that 90% of people say, yes, Rob, I want to. Then you get these other 10% they'll say, who's your audience? What's the questions? What's your numbers?
Oh,
And they want all these details. And I'm like,
I don't even ask that question.
let's just get on the podcast and shut up.
Yeah, just come and have a conversation with me. And the thing is, if anybody wants to talk to me about podcasting, I'm there with bells on. I'm happy to do it. If it's one person or a million people, it doesn't matter to me. I think the more we can spread the greatness of using a podcast for your business, the better.
Yeah,
Why not?
that's right. So how do people get a hold of you? Where do they go?
Well, I'm www.fairypodmother.co.uk. I'm Kath Lord Green. That's Lord hyphen Green, Kath with a K on LinkedIn. Find me there or at start underscore r underscore podcast. So start a podcast on Instagram and TikTok.
So, I've been posting lately on TikTok only because I think it's a necessary evil. I don't like it. But
Uh,
it is getting my numbers up there, and more people are listening to the podcast because I share other stuff on TikTok. But I stopped being on Twitter or X or whatever they call it now because to me it's too chaotic. And
yeah.
eh,
I'm on there, but I don't push it anymore. I'm on there because I've been on there since such a long time and so many followers on there. I don't think they're even on there much anymore.
mm,
I use it to follow my local football club's scores because I volunteer down there. And you see them quicker there. but I don't push it as follow me there kind of thing anymore. I think LinkedIn for me is the biggest.
Hmm. I've been on LinkedIn, I think, from the very beginning, like 2008, 2009, and so a very long time. And
Yeah,
yes, I've gotten a great following, and yes, I get some engagement, but that's where the business owners are. That's where the decision makers are, the entrepreneurs. That's
exactly.
my audience. Facebook is okay,
Hmm.
but they don't typically have when you're on Facebook, you're not always in entrepreneur mode. You're in mom and pop mode. You're in,
Exactly.
you just want
Yeah,
to share
exactly.
your stuff with your family. So,
Exactly. I am on Facebook, but again, I don't push that. I think for me, I do get business on LinkedIn. I get people that have worked with me who recommend me. They connect on LinkedIn, they message and say, so and so said, and you're the fairy pod mother. I need to come to you. And I say, yeah, they were right. You do. And they follow me there. But yeah, I'm just Kath Lord Green. And there's only one in the world. So you can't mistake me. I'm the only one on LinkedIn.
I thought I was the only one in the world, but apparently there's other people with my name.
Is there? Well, there isn't with mine, so I'm pleased about that.
No, but I love the studio. I love how it looks, with your wood and your
Oh,
your lights and your picture, and
thank you.
there's a lot. I think there's a lot of thought that goes into that. For me, not so much. I just throw it up, be done with it.
Well, I recently did it. Well, I did it last year, redid it, and it's just slightly different at each side. So this side's all like this, and if I just quickly whiz round the other side,
Well, that's nice too.
it's like that.
Yeah.
I tend to sit that way, but if I'm doing anything podcast related, I sit this way.
So everybody, please visit Kath over at oh, I put my notes, your fairypodmother.co.uk
Yeah,
and friend request her on LinkedIn. And
yeah, absolutely.
she's going to give you a lot of information. She's going to help you out. She'll have more patience than I do. Um, I'm not a pod mother. I'm more like the master.
You're the podcaster master. I'm your
Uh,
fairy podmother. I am very patient, especially when I'm teaching people. People have said that. If you look on Google on your fairy podmother, there's a lot of 5-star reviews there, and some of those people say that I seem to be patient and take time with people, so that's good. But it's been amazing speaking to you. Thank you so much for asking me. I've
and
really enjoyed it.
with that, everybody, we'll see you on the next episode. But please go visit Kath and connect with her. And if you have a podcast you want created, she'll help you out. Adios.